ambalo linazungumzia siku hii ya redio duniani miongoni mwa mengine.
Patricia, I'm looking at the media today, the space where they are and the environment in which they are working. There is this huge thing called AI. There is the internet. And then there is another group of people that have come to play in that space who may not necessarily be journalists. They have information, and sometimes it is factual information. They are citizen journalists. And we are talking about freedom of expression here. Yes, they are entitled to their freedom in their little space, in their blog space, in their, I don't know, their Google page, in all these different spaces that they are coming, and they are sending out information. How then do we maintain media freedom? Because there is freedom of expression and then there is media freedom. How do we maintain that media freedom and uphold the integrity of the media itself so that the media becomes the trusted source compared to the alternative truth? Truth is truth. But yeah, for the alternative information that is coming dressed up like media. How do we go about that? Are there any, maybe 2 nuggets you can give us of how we can begin to operate in that space as the media, and especially radio?
All right, thank you. And that's quite a complex question. It's very compounded. But I will start by saying, when you talk about freedom of the media, freedom of expression, and now in the context of artificial intelligence, first of all, when you look from the constitutional lens, freedom of expression is broad, and it's actually a right that is accessible to everybody. And everybody has a right to access information, impart people with information. And then we have now this other end of the freedom of the media. And I would say, first of all, in the view of the plurality of the media, and now we have now this, what you're calling in quotes, alternative sources of information, that is a plurality we want to and protect in a society, so that because we thrive, democracy thrives in an environment where there is plurality of ideas and freedom to express yourself, to impart information, to get information. But then, of course, now here we come with the question of AI and also the issues of credibility in terms of information integrity, and then also the issues of accuracy of information. And as from the example given, where individuals who are not subjecting themselves to the media code, for instance, now are not similarly bound. But I will say that under the freedom of expression, there is what we call the right to express yourself, but then also under Article, I think 33(2), there is also speech that is not protected. And this would be now speech that, for instance, advances hate speech, for instance. We also have now laws that now have also been enacted to create limitations to exercise of some rights, which also must be by law. When those limitations are created, for instance, there's those ones that there's a thin line in balancing between the right of expression itself and then also placing limitations on our rights. I think part of the solutions are both legal and unlegal. Legal in the sense that the law puts limits on rights that encroach on other rights, or rights that advances harm of other rights, or rights that now, for instance, that advances hate speech or calls to harm for a certain group of people. But then also non-legal would be, and this is some of the principles we've been seeing developing in terms of advancing information integrity. You will combine both legal and unlegal in terms of the non-legal would be building society trust and resiliency. And resiliency here is in terms of, can the people be in a position not to withstand manipulation? Can society be able to differentiate between the truthful and untruthful information? And this is where I feel the stronger role of media houses comes in, because they have the machinery, the mechanisms, the audience. The media still has the audience in terms of the numbers and reach, in terms of creating creating sensitivities to the public, and also leading the conversations on fact-checking and verifying information. We see that really coming from the media houses. But then also, I think we will reach a point where we see an expansion of what is ethics for media. So that ethics for media exists as we know today, but then also advancing ethics for people who have audiences, and these are now what we call practitioners who are not necessarily journalists, because they are also bound by the law to advance, to share and impart information and also receive information, but to do it within the limits of the law. We know that some laws have been enacted to try and create that balance of, for instance, publishing false information, but we have seen the way it is done right now. It has been an encroachment of a right, and it can actually be applied against even media. That's why we call for a limitation of the law that respects the Constitution, but not undermine. So I'm saying here there's a very thin line. But just to say also in the context, maybe in the broader conversation about AI and implications of AI in terms of both access to information and advancing information integrity, we have now, in fact, evolved to a question of where we talk about constitutionalism, but now we're also talking about digital constitutionalism. So that now we are not creating a new constitutional normative framework, but we are saying digital constitutionalism is an evolution of constitutionalism as we know it. So that now it starts to encompass aspects of protection of rights in the digital sphere, liabilities for all medium that are using AI, because it creates new liabilities. For instance, if let's say government or even non-state actors is using maybe AI systems to process data or information, then it creates liabilities it creates responsibilities to the audience, and this now applies to everybody. And then thirdly, now having the element of the tech companies, and it will come back to the question that you have asked me earlier, where now tech companies also have a responsibility, because they have been leading, or rather they have monopoly of how technology has been developing. Now it's the idea of bringing them into the realm of the law, so that even now when we have private citizens, for instance, using the digital platforms and tech platforms to advance information, where there is now a violation of rights, for instance, there's a dual duty between the person who is actually doing that, spreading that information. Let me say an example of the deep fakes, but then also the tech platforms also have a responsibility. So that also addresses that question you're asking about, how do we now address the issue, so that now even tech platforms themselves now understand they have a role in terms of, for instance, content moderation cannot be used to advance hate speech. It's a responsibility for the person advancing it and the tech platform, which is giving people to advance that hate speech through those platforms. Yeah.
That's really complicated, because if I create a platform, and I'll use just a simple example. If I create a chair, I intend it for sitting on, but somebody picks that.
Bila shaka